Welcome back to Digital Innovations in Oil and Gas. I've never had the misfortune of experiencing work-related incidents, especially in the industrial level, but many people have. And it's soul-crushing when it happens because it's in many cases completely unnecessary and it's very hard on the workers around you. Environmental health and safety is a serious topic in industrial world, especially in oil and gas. And not unlike much else in oil and gas, it's very susceptible to innovation and adaptation related to the cool new digital technologies that are available. But achieving real progress is actually hard. And on today's episode, I wanted to talk with someone who knows how to do this and has been through this at some depth. And so I'm pleased to welcome Amanda Smith, who is the Executive Vice President of Strategy at a company called Cority, to Digital Innovations in Oil and Gas to talk about this very topic. Amanda, welcome to Digital Innovations in Oil and Gas.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Let's begin with a bit of your background. Like, how did you end up at Cority? What's your origin story? If I was doing a Marvel movie about Amanda Smith, what?
Sure.
What's the?
Well, I started engineering at University of Michigan, so industrial and operations engineering, go blue.
Yeah.
And there I got the practical foundation of just how computers and technology, or technology and humans interact. And that's been a theme throughout my career of just really using technology to enable people. But my first job in EHS was working for an energy company. And I loved what I was doing there, kind of really helping to kind of protect the communities where we were operating, and the people that were doing the operations. But my favorite part of my job was the software. And so I joined Cority, and this was more than 20 years ago. And I've been in EHS software ever since. So
There's the story.
yeah.
So let's unpack the problem now. What's the motivation here to devote your life's work to this, call it the intersection of software or technology and EHS? Like
Sure.
why bother?
Well, I'd say at its core, EHS is really about making sure people go home safe, that they stay healthy over a long career, and protecting the communities that we work in, the planet that we work on. And for me personally, there's a lot of different things that kind of call me to this work, but I've experienced it myself, knowing what it means when it doesn't work. So my grandfather died when he was actually younger than I am, from a lung disease he got while he was working in the mines. My father was 6, so he lost his dad very, very young. And that is something that has not only impacted their family then, but is stuck with our family for generations. It's something that my children even know about and impacts them. And so when things go wrong at work, it can have lasting impacts. And that's not okay, right? Like, we need to make sure we're operating responsibly, we're protecting our workers, we're protecting the people next to us and the communities that we operate in. And that's what EHS people do. Over the last 20 years of being in EHS, I've asked EHS professionals, why do you do this?
Yeah.
And there's really 2 reasons. And one of them is a story like mine, that reason that has a name, something that happened that went wrong, that stuck with them, and they felt they really needed to do something to prevent that type of thing from happening, to fix it. The other side is just people who are problem solvers, and they wanted to solve problems that felt like they mattered, right? And protecting people, protecting the planet, responsible operations really feel like they mattered. So a lot of people in EHS really focused on making sure people are going home safe, and making sure that we're protecting long-term health and protecting the communities that we work in. There's a bunch of different programs that turns into safety programs and incident and injuries management. It turns into occupational health and exposure monitoring. It turns into environmental, so you're doing emissions calculations, air emissions, water, waste reporting, or sustainability reporting, right? And Cordy builds software that helps them do that. Right? It helps make that better. Technology can enable all of those really critical programs and make sure that we're really doing the best that we can. And now AI is extending that value and making it so we can do things even faster, even better insights. And that's really what these EHS professionals who are dedicating their lives to helping and supporting businesses to make sure they're responsible, really providing those tools to them.
There must be a cost and productivity angle though. If I put myself in the shoes of the CFO, chief financial officer, who's looking at the health and safety of the organization and the
Yep.
risks that the organization is facing, and its steps to manage that risk. There has to be an economic angle here that really matters to that CFO. How do you
Yeah.
characterize that when you talk to people about the scale and scope of the problem here?
Well, absolutely. So when any of these things go wrong that, I look at from an altruistic perspective, like trying to protect things, we're also protecting the business because when somebody gets injured, it's not just the person, there's also downtime, right? There's disruptions to operations. So protecting the people, protecting the operations, it helps you protect your brand, right? Any kind of spill or exposure, you don't want to be in the news because of some kind of environmental exposure or because there was a fatality or a serious injury. Those are all things that are going to be bad for the brand as well as they have real cost, right? There's real cost to employees being out and the insurance claims and all of those things with it. Um, but I think the biggest impact really is just that making sure the operations are running as smooth as possible. Running safer is running better. It really is better.
Yeah. There's definitely an insurance angle lurking here. I
Yeah.
was involved with a oil sands company that experienced a plant fire, and the amount of money at stake, but because of that particular incident, was not really the repair of the equipment. That was actually minor. The real issue was the loss of production time was a serious impact. So there has to be a connection here, I think, between
Mhm.
effective management of environmental safety, health, equipment integrity, and economic performance of the business. Does this surface in your conversations when you speak with business managers?
Absolutely. So we definitely have documented return on investment around just reduced injuries and then translating that into the cost savings, reduced time away from work. Right. There's lots of calculations that we have and we have verified from our customers of not just the cost savings, but also when it's done really well, you identify performance opportunities, better performance, and actually can create value. So this one's not a safety one, but an example is we had a company that we work with, a large company that it's outside of oil and gas, but I think it matters. It's one of the stories that sticks with me is a large company who was managing their waste, and in this case they had tires that they were disposing of, sending to landfills. And that's a cost to the business to dispose. Like you have to pay for the transport, you have to pay for that disposal. And because the environmental team was using our product, they understood exactly how much waste they were creating of this type, and they found other uses and buyers for that. So
Mm.
instead of them having to pay to get rid of it, now it's being used to create playground equipment. And it went from a cost center to a
Yeah.
revenue generator. And that's just one small example, but there's so many things within our business that if you have better insights into them, across EHS that you can actually create real value and not just avoid costs.
So Coronys focuses on provision of technology to help companies do a better job in this arena. So what's current software landscape like? If I were to pop into, say, an industrial enterprise, am I likely to find a beautiful end-to-end, integrated, carefully architected, frontline to boardroom system that I can sort of find any piece of data I want in an instant? Is that what I'm going to find?
No, that's not what
No,
you find today.
typically not.
Certainly that's the direction that we're all going for, right? That's
Yeah.
where we want to get to. But a lot of organizations really um, around the purchase of software. So they have lots of individual one-off softwares at this plant or this site or software for this program or this one. Sometimes they're modern technology, sometimes they're not, right? Sometimes we're still using spreadsheets and
Hmm.
then being able to get your hands on all of the data, it's really quite difficult. So we have seen the trend of and people pushing towards consolidating. finding a few platforms or a platform, like one platform within EHS that can meet your needs and across all of your programs. Because it's great. Hey, having software is better than a spreadsheet or a sticky note, right? So having something is good, but having software that talks to each other, that it's integrated, that it can understand the risks from over here, that impact the risks over here, gives you a much broader picture. And we certainly see that that's the trend recently, of people looking towards consolidation, but nobody's done it perfectly yet. So I don't know that anybody has this perfect system quite yet, but there are absolutely leaders that are working towards it. And we've actually in the last, I would say, less than a year, seen a lot of momentum pick up around that because of AI. Because not only having the consolidating is going to have a return on investment. It's reduced costs, less systems. You're going to have better visibility, having everything all together in one place. But now with AI, it's a fundamental requirement to get the most out of AI. You really need to have this foundation of a platform that you can be built on and talk to and exchange information. And so we're seeing a big consolidation and a push towards that. So I think we're all going in the right direction.
My sense is that the landscape for regulators plays a significant role here. Because if you go from, I just think a few years ago, carbon was not even a calculation when I put my first book together in 2018, 2019. Carbon was not a factor in making industrial decisions at the time.
Yeah.
It was just a view that, oh, you just emit it or it goes into the atmosphere. And yeah, you try and keep it down. You don't be excessive about it, but you just kind of live
Right.
with it. And some regulators have changed. That has to weigh into how you architect your foundation to get you the data that you need to be able to get ahead of these particular issues, I would think.
Absolutely. The regulations are changing, and they have been. They continue. There's no shortage of regulations or change to regulation. And understanding what you need to be compliant
Mhm.
is the baseline. That is absolutely required. And I think once you have a true platform, you can go beyond compliance and you can get to being more proactive in risk mitigation. But fundamentally, absolutely, you've got to have that understanding of kind of what are your risks? What are you required to comply with? What do you need to do? And that's changing so fast. It's really companies need partners
Yeah.
to be able to manage all of the changes happening with technology partners, regulatory consultants, those types of things to really stay on top of this constantly changing world.
Yeah, years ago, I worked on a pipeline project for a large North American company. So a big pipeline, like we're talking thousands of kilometers long.
Okay.
And as it went from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, it triggered new regulatory requirements. So might be in, I don't know, in the United States, it's might be county by county. Sometimes you have a different
Yeah.
rule and regulation. And it was so complicated. The question they asked us to solve was which regulations can we afford to ignore and just
Mm.
live with the consequence? Because if we tried to comply with all of them, we would never build the pipeline. Like,
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. That's an interesting approach. Sometimes organizations will look at, well, what's the most restrictive or most difficult thing to comply with,
yeah,
and then just do that everywhere, even where it's not required. But that's costly, right? So that's not an easy decision to make. There are trade-offs, and sometimes there's regulations that are even kind of in conflict with each other.
yeah,
So having uh, software and having tools that can help you report as you need to for each place, let you know, well, while you're here,
mhm,
right, you just drove to this section of the pipeline and you're doing your inspections, this is what you need to look for. Because we can't expect our workers, our employees to know all of that nuance. Like
yeah.
we can hardly keep track of it. So having a system to be able to kind of provide that advice is absolutely really required to make it manageable.
That implies that you really do have to push the technology itself, the architecture, right out to the field. It's not good enough to just leave it at, say, supervisory building. You got to have it in the trucks and the equipment. Is that a fair
That is
conclusion?
absolutely fair. It needs to be in the way that you're doing work.
Mm,
You want to think about, am I doing this as safe as possible? Am I doing this in compliance? Every time you're doing something, it's the workers that are out there, the ones that are, you know, checking the gauges, or they're out there in the field. Those are the ones that are at risk. That's where the biggest risk is and where the biggest opportunity is. We have to make sure we're reaching them.
What does the sort of frontier or edge look like for companies that are really good at this? Well, like, what do they experience by way of hard business benefit that the laggards or those who are more uh, not as so much on the edge, a bit more state of market. What's the gap there? What are the front end people experiencing?
So I think the front end people are really seeing there's a lot less kind of waste in manual handoffs and manual work, and experts are able to focus their time on the valuable things, not on just administration. And it's also easier to incorporate. We don't want being safe to make it harder to do your job. We want it to be the things that make the most sense. You have the information at your
Mm,
fingertips. We create these plans of kind of what work is going to look like. But when you get in the field, it very rarely looks like what you actually planned for. So having information about, ooh, how should I adapt to this? What do I need to consider here? That information is really valuable. Reaching to that workforce. And so we see the leading companies are doing that. They're putting technology in the hands of their workforce. They're having information coming back to the experts to be able to provide that guided information. They're integrating programs too. So you can do things like understand the risk of an individual employee, not the average employee. But if you have health information, if someone has restrictions for work, if they're fit for duty, you have that information along with what you're asking them to do. What maintenance activity, what clean out are you going to ask them to do?
yeah.
And take those two things together and make sure that they're doing it in the safest way for that person. And that's really the direction that that leading companies are going and where they're getting to. That saves money. It saves you're not doing work that's unnecessary, right? You're doing it when it's needed. You're fit for the work that's happening. And overall, it increases reliability. And that's probably the biggest business impact, increased reliability made from faster, better informed decisions.
Yeah, all we need is 1 or 2% boost in
That's
operational
right.
operational
Yeah.
reliability pays for everything. It's just the
Yeah.
way it is. It reminds me of a story I'd heard at one point. A company was trying to understand where the incidents were likely to happen, so they could kind of predict and that way they could target their EHS energies much more surgically rather than peanut buttering it across 1,000 employees. They could say, "Oh,
Right.
this group of employees are the most at risk in this instance because of this set of factors." You can't even see that data unless you've got the right foundation. Does these new tools, do they help you get ahead of the problem so that you're not just reacting to it, you're actually preventing it or anticipating? Is that one of the angles here?
Yeah, absolutely. It's being predictive about understanding risk. Now, I want to be clear here. AI and these tools are never going to say next Wednesday John's going to fall from heights. Like that's not how risk works, right?
No.
It's not going to predict a specific incident, but what it can do is tell you when risk is elevating, right? You
Yeah.
can understand that all of these conditions together are
Mm.
making something that normally on its own maybe looks like it's fine. It's within operating conditions. It's within the threshold that you might have, maybe a piece of equipment is operating within the threshold, but at the top side. And then you also take into account the weather and that it's really hot outside. Now you take into account the fact that like this is the second shift. There's been a lot of overtime. It's late and
Tired.
people are fatigued
Yeah,
and they're
yeah.
tired and things
Yep.
are not happening the way that, we're not following process as much as we normally would. There might be
Mm.
some kind of, maybe some leakage from equipment, some emissions that are like within the allowable limit. But so each one of those things, if you're managing in a silo, seems like it's okay. But when you take them all together, they're actually a signal that like this could be a big problem. This could
Yeah.
be the equipment now, there's an explosion, there's something wrong that's going to hurt people. It's going to shut down equipment. It's going to shut down your operations, all of those things. So I do, the tools are helping people to predict, to understand where there's these areas of risk so you can intervene and creating a bigger picture. So if you take all this information and you throw it into a data lake, you can look at it after the fact and have a human looking through it. And that's good, but it takes months of time to figure that out. With AI and having all the information together and understanding the workflows as they're happening, we can actually see what would have taken months in minutes and
Mm.
actually intervene. So we're predicting and then preventing those issues.
Did this get into near real time
Mhm.
assessment? Because I'm thinking
Yeah,
down the track, right? We'll see. Well, it's on the horizon. You can kind of see the
mhm,
vague outlines of it, but
yeah,
robots doing work on site, interacting much more closely with people to do things, and we're going to need the robots to be sensitive and aware of the context that they're in, so that they do not create unsafe conditions. And for that to happen, it now has to move away from rear view mirror. Oh, we
yeah,
this is what happened last week to no, no, no. It's right now. You have to be on top of this. Is I
yeah.
sense this is where this might head.
It's definitely whether or not the robot's doing it or the person,
Yeah.
either way, we need to be able to see what's happening right now and what's the risk at this moment right now. I
Mm,
actually think people there's a lot of things that we're a long way off of having operations that don't have people executing work and moving atoms, turning things, right? And
yeah.
as long as there are people out there, people are amazing, adaptable creatures, but they're also their own source of risk. So we have to make sure they have the best information possible, that we're providing them with all the tools we can. And I do think that that's what AI is going to enable us to do is be real-time guidance, what's happening, understanding things that maybe they can't see,
Yeah.
right? And feeding them that information so they can be more proactive. And if there happens to be a robot working alongside them, then that robot can also be informed.
Oh, I'm certainly anticipating it. There are the Boston Robotics, the outfit that makes the walking dogs, and you see the dancing
Oh,
robots.
yeah. Uh-huh.
They're in use in some facilities now, experimental.
Yeah.
But I think that world. I see shapes of it. I agree with you. It's
Yeah.
distant, but I can
Yeah.
see the outlines of it starting to emerge.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
turn to so when you question of reaction to when companies you go and you engage with them. EHS, to be honest, right? It's taken a bit of a beating of late in the media. Um,
Sure.
but to a degree, that's arguably attitudes about taking some parts of the EHS message way too far beyond the boundary. But in industry, we're much more practical and rooted.
Sure.
So but what's the reaction when you go and say, "Hey, we have some technology that could make this much easier." How do they go, "Oh, we're fine.
Oh, no,
We're
no. So it
compliant."
really it depends on who you're talking to, right? The EHS people are asking for it. Yes, please. I need to get off. I need to make this more automated. I'm spending way
Yeah,
too much time emailing people for information or like begging for data or information. If you can give me a tool that's going to help me get my hands on the information so I can make a more informed decision, I can do more.
yeah,
Really, EHS is desperately trying to get that connection with operations and making sure they have that, understand what's happening on the ground and
mm,
educating people, having that line of communication. So EHS professionals want the technology. It's going to help them. They see it. And then a lot of times it's that making the ROI justification because a lot of times EHS is viewed as a cost center,
yeah,
right? And
mm,
so how are we going to make an investment in this cost center? We should be reducing cost. But where we can prove that it is making people more efficient, it is allowing them to do more with less as we're asking them to, because the regulations, as you mentioned earlier, they're compounding. You're being asked to do more and more and monitor more and more. And the tools enable them to do that with the same staff, right? To not have to add on, to get more efficient. And then also when we point to the lives saved, the injuries saved, the days away from work, all of those things have real financial impact. So being able to communicate that up to show that the savings as well as the possible like the performance improvements that the organizations can have, that really helps makes the business case to get the investment that it takes, because there is an investment to put in. You wanna make sure you're getting that return, and when you're competing against, another, increase in production, it's like, this is how we can increase production while
yeah.
also keeping our employees safe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes it a winning, combination, I suspect. What are the
Yeah.
sorts of objections that you hear that, turn out to be, more myth than reality? And things that come to mind to me is, I can't give my employees a mobile phone out in the field to collect all that beautiful data you want because it's unsafe or what have you. I mean, there's a bunch of things you can dream up that you would
Sure.
stand in the front of this and go, "I'm not doing anything. This is not as important as you think," et cetera, et cetera. What are the myths out there that you often hear?
So we collect health information about employees. So things about their vaccinations, their fitness for
Yep.
duty, their like lots of very sensitive information. And so there are definitely people who are like, I can't give you that information. I can't have that outside of my organization. And I certainly can't have it in SaaS software that's on the internet.
Yeah.
But we've been doing this for more than 40 years with that same health data. And we're protected by even the US government and the federal, we have FedRAMP certification. So it's at the highest levels of data security. And we can protect that data. So there's like the myth of like, I can't let this information outside of the bounds of my organization, but we can create the software in a way that's helping the teams, that's protecting the data, and you get all of the benefits of this thing, that the software that has all this expertise built in, that we're keeping it up to date, and you don't have to worry about kind of maintaining it, creating it. We'll make sure your data is safe and protected. And really, we put millions and millions of dollars of investment into our safety and security in our architecture, way more than somebody's putting, that most organizations in oil and gas are putting into their own, technology infrastructure. You're investing somewhere else. This is our business. We're making sure we're protecting it, keeping it up, keeping it ready. So it's one of the things. I think that there's on the other side, there's people who are worried that AI is going to run rampant and take their jobs. That's another myth, right? And I think that especially in EHS, we continue to need EHS professionals. And what AI can do is make them superhuman. It can give them so much more to do, but we're still going to need someone to provide first aid. As long as you have workers in the field, you're going to need human beings to support them.
Yeah.
And we definitely provide the services, the AI in a safe way. Like, I think that there's a lot of fears around that, but as time goes on, we'll see that the right place there, it can help. We can live harmoniously with AI, and achieve the value that we're all looking for.
What it should do, like many novel technologies when they come into the industrial world, is they do displace certain kinds of jobs, but they end up creating dramatically more and different jobs out there.
That's right.
And I think that's probably the certainly way I think about it. I was at a conference recently where one of the speakers described AI as perfectly suited toward dirty, dangerous, and dull. And that's where you aim it at, because people don't like to do those jobs because they're dirty, they're dangerous, and they're dull. But what that does is it frees them up to do much more higher value things. And I think
Yeah.
that's really the angle here. I assume you might be seeing some of that kind of conclusion as well. Let's
Yeah.
aim this AI at the jobs that people don't want to do versus at the jobs that people really like doing.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot of people that love to do administration of like taking information from one place to another place and then collating, there are people out there, but that is not generally where most people find their most value or want to spend their time. So let's take the time off of that so you can spend the time doing more value added things. And AI is really perfectly suited for that, which I would consider dull.
I totally agree. Let's turn to the future now. How do you see this world changing as we go in the forward? I mean, for example, there are some economies of the world where it is said that EHS standards are lower than others countries. So there's a
Mhm.
chance here to raise all boats. So that's an
Mhm.
angle.
Yeah.
There could be that there's areas of this EHS indicators or factors that are just unexplored yet. Where does this go? Like, what's the roadmap here?
Yeah. So I think that's a great question. Um, and then there's a lot of ways to take it. So I think that the future looks like thinking about being responsible, protecting our employees. It's how we do it is just a part of good business. So it is raising all boats. It's making it's everybody's job and to understand the impacts that we're making, both within our business and to the people and communities around it. And that doesn't mean that it has to be a cost center. I think we want to move away from viewing EHS as a cost center to viewing it as a place, a way to differentiate, an opportunity, a way to we operate responsibly, we protect our people, we're using technology in the best ways possible to reduce risk to people, right? Find those dangerous things where we can use technology, and then applying people in really value-added ways so we can do more with less impact on the planet, on our employees, right? So we're just making business healthier overall. I really do see that. And within EHS, I think around the world, AI is changing everything. It's really hard to predict the future, but we do know it's going to help make us more efficient. It's going to help. And I do believe that we can use humanistic AI to help us do better. We can, it's not, there are views of the world that AI is evil. And I think that it probably could be in some cases, but generally the future, the direction is that it is going to be a tool that does change the way that we work. It changes it to create jobs for people that are more exciting things that they want to do. I really think that it's on the cusp of something that allows us to really reduce the risk and our impact, and operate more responsibly. So
I personally, I think it's a part of human flourishing on the planet, actually, is to embrace these advancements with the goal to making human existence better than it was a year ago.
yeah,
And so striking the right balance, I think, is the key. It's not just about AI and job displacement, but it's about job enrichment. And how do we take that as enriched jobs and extend it
right.
into making the planet a better place? Any
That's right.
any any advice you have that you might share with somebody listening to this podcast or watching this
Yeah.
video, that you would say to them? You're like, where would you start? This feels like could be a very big elephant that you have to eat.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a great point. So I think about this all the time. Um, I think AI creates a huge amount of opportunity, but also a huge amount of uncertainty. It's moving really fast. And the fact is, most of us aren't experts in it, right? There's very few people who are experts. And so it's changing so fast. How do we kind of control it? How do we control our risk? How do we take advantage of it? Because the thing is, if you don't start understanding and using it, the gap between people who use it and organizations that really use it and those that don't is going to become wider and wider, and you'll be left behind, right? And that's scary. My advice is really two things. It's start gaining real experience now. In limited risk, like places where you feel comfortable with it, but start that. And also at the same time, start building the infrastructure, that technology infrastructure that you'll need to ultimately do the things that AI promises and the things that technology promise. So I think of this, trying to like think of it in a way that is relatable. And I came up with an analogy. And the
Okay.
analogy would be, think of a teenage driver. Okay, we're all teenage drivers. Our organizations are drivers, and AI is the car. Your technology partners are your instructors, and the road is really your data, your platforms, your governance. It's what you're going to drive on, right? So, as a teenage driver, you're not going to hand them the keys to a sports car on a dirt road in the middle of a snowstorm. You don't. This is not where you start, right?
You go to the
So let's
parking lot with some orange cones and
you're gonna start
here's
in the
the
parking
basics. Yeah.
lot, right? Then you
Yep.
get a little bit, and then you're gonna move out onto the streets, the
Mm,
quiet streets first, right?
yeah.
You're gonna get some experience. You're gonna make some mistakes, but they're low risk. You understand that you're going in, and you have your your instructor there with you. So even though you don't understand all of the rules, you have instructor there. This is a tricky intersection. This is what you're gonna do and guide you through it. But you're getting real experience, and that real experience is really important because overusing it, getting organizations, getting your workers, getting your whole organization used to an understanding that AI doesn't need to be something to fear, and understanding and knowing where it is safe and where it's not, and really building that experience is really important to start doing now. At the same time, you got to build that highway, right? So your IT, your organizations, they need to start working on clean data,
Yeah.
connected systems,
Governance.
get rid of all of those
Yeah.
one-off solutions,
Mhm.
a platform that you can work with that's going to be modern, that's going to keep growing. So that way, when you feel comfortable and when you're ready and when AI gets to that point, you can take that car and you can get on the highway and you can go. Right. And it's not about having a sports car, but like you can get there. But really, right now, it's practical. You work with someone who understands it, can guide you, you make sure it's safe, but you're getting experience now and you're building yourself to be ready for the future. And you really need to do both.
I think that's an excellent place to bring this conversation to a close. Amanda, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing this perspective around the digital impacts, AI, and EH&S. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. It was fun.
This has been another episode of Digital Innovations in Oil and Gas. Please share this with your network so that others can hear, and I'll return in a week's time with another episode. Bye for now.